Hi, I'm Marcy.
And I'm Garrett.
And this is Movie Night featuring our special guest, Kelly. Today we'll be discussing the Oscars.
Okay, so let's start off. What was you guys' overall thoughts on Neil Patrick Harris hosting this year? A lot of people were saying in years past that this is the way to fix the Oscars, and do you think that's correct? Do you think the show is more entertaining or better this year because of him?
I mean, I think one of the things I heard beforehand that I think held true, because I heard a lot of stuff last night saying he was flat comedic-wise, but if you're going to have Ellen DeGeneres on the year before, that's a comedian. She's not a performer. Neil Patrick Harris is a performer. He's very much, and that's why I think his opening number, his entire hosting, was a lot more of, it's like a show. It felt more of like a performance. And whereas Ellen last year, it was like mostly just all comedy. There was no opening number, it was all stand-up. So I think, like, his hosting-wise, I don't think you can compare it to, like, especially last year just because of how different they were. But I thought his opening number was really great. And I was okay with it. I thought he did a good job.
Marcy?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. You know, I liked Ellen's hosting and I liked his hosting, but I don't think either of them are really similar enough where I can say either one was better, because like you said, Ellen is comedy, he's a performer. So yeah, but I enjoyed his hosting. I loved the opening number too, and I was entertained, and that's really all that's important.
And do you did you, obviously he had so much experience with the Tonys, with the whole musical song and dance, and that's very performer-based, and I didn't even think his comedy was that flat.
I mean, I heard people saying his comedy was flat. The only thing that, like, I didn't think, like, I wasn't really into the entire night was the whole briefcase bit. I wasn't really into it. By the end, I was like, okay, like, this will be funny, but, like, my parents especially were like, I'm not into this whole briefcase joke. So I feel like that was the only thing of the night that I was just kind of like,
I mean, by that point the show was already going half an hour over, and the predictions were obviously not real predictions, so it wasn't that funny. I get he's a magician, and he's the president of the North American Magicians Board or something. And I get all that, but at the end of the day, it was a lot of time about jokes that everybody was already making all over Twitter. And
Exactly, yeah.
yeah.
And I guess that might be the issue with the comedy, is that the jokes were things that we've already been joking about for days now.
Yeah.
So it's like, and he probably like wrote the material like days before, so the jokes were already being made, so he couldn't really change it. But yeah, but I mean overall, you know, again, I like the performance, but comedy, it was okay, but you know, not really compared to Ellen.
what did we think of, in terms of who actually won? What did we think? Were there any upsets? Were you guys gunning for anybody else? I know Boyhood was a big... Everybody was shocked that Boyhood didn't get anything and that Birdman swept as much as it did. So what do you guys think of that?
Well, you know, like a few days before the Oscars, I came up to you and I said, Garrett, I'm worried about Birdman. And I should have been worried about Birdman. And so I wasn't that surprised when they called it. But I wasn't that upset over it, because I just expected it from them. I was like, it's the Academy voting about a movie about actors, so I'm like, it's not the weirdest thing I've ever heard of. So like, more of my upset categories were like really just more like personal stuff. Like, I'm really into movie scores. I know you have a few movie scores on your iPad or your iPod. And so I didn't think Grand Budapest Hotel should have won in that category, and I felt really strongly about that. Like, I have The Theory of Everything and The Imitation Game, and I think a few others on my iPod, and I was rooting for all of them. I was like, this is a really great category, and I did not agree with the Grand Budapest Hotel.
Although I would say that Grand Budapest Hotel I think it won mostly because of the movie that it was featured in, more than the actual score itself, because the movie that it was in, it was very good at setting the tone for, and very good at immersing itself into the Wes Andersonian universe, which I don't think, I might be wrong about this, but I don't think the composer had ever done a Wes Anderson movie before, and it was very Wes Anderson feeling and all that. Yeah. Where Imitation Game and Theory of Everything had really good soundtracks. They were really good, but you could have told me they were from A Beautiful Mind or The Social Network, and I would have believed.
Yeah, it's true. It's a good point.
I'm just forever content American Sniper didn't win overall Best Picture, so, you know, whatever else happened tonight didn't really matter to me. Except Big Hero 6 won animation, so I was pretty happy about that.
I thought actually, well, obviously, huge upset that we haven't even talked about yet was the Lego Movie not even getting nominated, which I think blew all of the other animated movies in that category out of the water.
Oh, definitely.
But I actually think How to Train Your Dragon 2 was a better movie than Big Hero 6, and I was kind of surprised that it didn't win. I thought it had more heart than Big Hero 6. I thought it had more drama, more action, it was more fun.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. I was just really surprised with Disney with Big Hero 6, just because Frozen was the biggest letdown, overhyped thing I've ever seen in my life. So then I saw Big Hero 6, which kind of had the same concepts of like sibling relationships, love and loss, and just general fantasy-ish action background.
But at the end of the day, Big Hero 6 still felt like a kid's movie. How to Train Your Dragon 2, while not being as good as the first How to Train Your Dragon, still didn't. It felt like, at the very least, a family movie, and that's something that I think DreamWorks is starting to get really good at, and that Pixar is really good at, and Disney doesn't quite understand yet the difference between making a kids movie and making a family movie. And you could still have drama and tension and real conflict without it having to be superficial.
Yeah, but I guess it's like, then how do we really judge animated movies? Like yeah, Big Hero 6 was obviously made more for children, but it's like, it still had like the themes of grief and loss, but it's like, so is How to Train Your Dragon 2 better because it pushed more boundaries, or is, Big Hero 6 better because it pushed boundaries, but it still maintained like a thing that a child could watch?
Well, who's deciding what the Oscars are? Like, the Academy is made up of adults
True.
deciding on movies that they think the entirety of the viewing population, which obviously isn't always accurate, should be most partial to what is the best objectively.
One of the other things of the night that I was really happy with was Whiplash did really good. And
Yes.
5 nominations, 3 out of 5 is not bad. I would have been very surprised if they took Best Picture just because they were up against a lot of big boys. But and then I think it was original or adapted screenplay was the other one that they didn't win. But I mean, they really turned out well, and I was really happy throughout the night. And there were certain movies that I was rooting for, but when Whiplash took it, I was like, I'm glad because Miles Teller.
Yeah, I was definitely rooting for Whiplash. For a lot of them, definitely J.K. Simmons in Best Supporting Actor. I was very much hoping for, but I think at that point was kind of in the bag. There weren't that many upsets, with the exception of Birdman taking the big 3 that maybe Boyhood should have gotten at least one of.
Yeah.
But Whiplash definitely got the. I was really proud. Sound mixing and editing and Best Supporting Actor. That's what Whiplash made. Yes. And I think definitely warranted J.K. Simmons' performance.
Oh yes.
And I think he was one of the better speeches. I think Graham Moore
from The Imitation Game.
The guy who wrote The Imitation, he had a really good speech, and he deserved that Oscar.
Yeah.
Definitely an amazing screenplay, and something that's really good. And his speech wasn't just about The Imitation Game. It wasn't. It was a lesson for everybody, and I thought that was really good.
The only thing that I think that people should take away from this Oscar season is that even when my family was looking at what movie we thought was going to win Best Picture, we knew it was between Birdman and Boyhood, but it was kind of a hard year for me because I saw both films. I didn't really enjoy Birdman. I thought Boyhood was a really good movie, but I wouldn't call either of them the best picture of the year in my personal opinion. They just were. I feel in comparing the two, they were shot so differently. They're two very different types of really revolutionary filmmaking, and so comparing them together just didn't really make any sense to me. And I think at the end of the day, even if you get over the fact that Boyhood was shot over 12 years, I started thinking about that. Is it as good as a movie if I just imagined that this wasn't over 12 years? Or is Birdman, I think it 100% deserved the cinematography because it was really cool the way the camera felt like it never stopped. But it was it was amazing. But I think the movie for me that I want people to remember from this year was The Imitation Game. Because that was a movie about someone who I had never heard about, and I was so angry I never heard about I walked out of the theater. And I cried in that movie so hard. I am not an easy movie crier, but I was crying so hard by the end of that movie. And I think if you're going to take one thing from this movie season, I think you should take the story of a guy who did so much for our society, who saved so many people. And going into last night, I didn't think The Imitation Game was going to win anything. So when it did win Best Adapted Screenplay, I was so excited. But I think even though it didn't get a lot of the recognition this Oscar season, that's really the movie that I think I'm going to remember from this year.
We've also, the movie that wins Best Picture is almost never the movie that you remember. I sat for a good 5 minutes trying to remember that 12 Years a Slave was the movie who won last year.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way it is every Oscar season, because Argo and The Artist, both incredible movies.
Yeah.
Both about filmmaking, neither of which, by far,
yeah,
neither of them were the best movie of their respective years. Or The King's Speech was up against Inception and The Social Network, which are two of the biggest influential films of the past decade.
Mm-hmm.
And The King's Speech, which is a really good, stuffy British period piece, but still a stuffy British period piece.
Yeah.
So I think definitely we're going to remember Boyhood, and we're going to
Yeah.
remember The Imitation Game, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.